Hello, my fellow movie fans, and welcome to the new adventures of A Feast of Films Theatre with your hosts, Jesse Prosser and Ethan R. Hill.
In Technicolor.
Alrighty. Don't do it. Don't you do it. Don't you do it. Don't you do it.
Howdy, y'all! I'm Jesse James Prosser, and this man here is Ethan the Kid Hill, and we're here to discuss the Western genre. How you doing, partner?
You know, even your laugh is Western.
Well, I definitely went for like the old prospector voice with that one.
The prospector is not a cowboy.
Well, howdy. Well, it's a beloved archetype. I assume.
Welcome to the last episode of A Feast of...
We're finally back, everybody. Our commitment to an episode a month got done up when we both got sick and then busy, and it became a whole thing. But we're back, and we wanted to discuss the Western genre.
I feel like this time we just need to stop promising that we'll be back or a specific schedule. We'll make videos when we make them.
You're gonna get content when we say you'll get it.
And until then, watch the old stuff.
Yeah,
I don't care.
yeah,
I'm very tired.
There's a 4-year backlog, everybody. Just go watch a random episode.
Not a 4-year backlog.
Yes, there is. Oh, I guess this is year 4. We're in year 4 now.
No, this is season 4.
Season 4. So no, it'd be 3 years at least then.
Yeah, we started in May of 2020, which was during the pandemic.
Yes.
It is now March of 2023. We're coming up to the 3-year mark. However,
They'll come up to the 4-year mark.
No, it'll be the 3-year mark.
Comment down below if it's the 3 or 4th year mark.
The beginning of the 4th, but it's the
end of the 3rd.
Yeah.
I see.
Well, because 2020, 2021,
2021,
2021, 2022, 2022, 2023. It's only 3 years.
I see.
Yeah.
No, it all makes sense now.
Do I start calling you 31 now because you're almost 31?
Okay.
What? I'll just say that. You're
Well, no.
almost there.
I'm very upset by all of that.
Yeah.
That you just said.
Man.
I see.
Unlike me, who's just 25.
Yes.
Freshly 25.
So young, and with your whole life ahead of you.
Mm-hmm. It is.
But you know whose life isn't ahead of them?
Cowboys.
Yes.
No, cowboys still exist. That's an egregious thing to say.
No, there's cowboy. No, there are cowboys, but mostly it's cowboy cosplayers.
No, like people like.
Ethan, we live in Calgary. There's a lot of cowboy cosplayers.
Yes, but we've worked on westerns.
Oh, of course. Yeah, and there's like people who work on those, of course, who are legitimately like cow wranglers and things like that. What?
You're just gonna offend all the people who are gonna watch this.
Oh no, I've done it again. But yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. But yeah.
Yeah. But no, it's probably a genre we don't talk about as often as others. But we both do love a good Western at the end of the day.
Emphasis on a good Western.
Yes, there's like any genre, there are a lot of not great ones, and especially when it comes to the Western genre, there are lots that haven't aged as well as others. But regardless, there are still a lot of great ones to discuss, and just the genre as a whole, I feel, is worth discussing.
Yes.
And its influence on cinema.
Yes. And that's why we're here. Because that's why we're here.
So, what would you say is, like, your earliest introduction to the Western genre?
So this is funny, because I was thinking about this beforehand, and I'm like, I have no clue what my first introduction to the Western genre was. Was it Back to the Future? Was it,
I guess, yeah, that is a Western, isn't it?
Yeah, like, and I was thinking about, like, there's a few different answers.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not really movie related.
Okay. All right.
but it's this weird mix of Looney Tunes
Oh
and
yeah.
Yosemite Sam,
Of course. Classic.
but also the old Lone Ranger, like 1950s Lone Ranger,
Mm.
and also old radio broadcasts.
Oh. Okay.
Because I think I've talked about it before, where I have these tapes of old radio shows back from like the 30s, 40s, 50s, well before TV was like a major thing.
Right.
And on that was
Back in the '60s when you were a young lad.
yes, when I was a child, back when I was a child in the early 20s.
When you was a wee lad.
Yes, I'm actually like 100 years old. I moisturize.
Eat your vegetables, kids.
Yeah, otherwise you look like him.
Yeah,
He's only 12.
that's true.
So
I'm 25 years old.
what's this, a Doc and Marty relationship?
Great Scott.
I had a rejuvenation done. How do I look?
Yeah, if they do a new one, yeah, they should have Doc would regenerate like the Doctor.
Yeah, pretty much. So yeah, so for me it was like the Lone Ranger, Gunsmoke, the Cisco Kid,
Okay.
all that kind of stuff, and then Bonanza on TV as well. Like there was a lot of Western TV like that, like my dad grew up with.
Yeah.
Gray area because I would consider it Western, but also like it's more frontiersman. But Davy Crockett.
Oh yeah.
Um,
I'd say to a certain degree it counts.
right, because it's kind of like the question of what is a Western is like for me it's any of the whole people from people heading west to fill out the American dream
Yeah.
and all that kind of
Looking
stuff.
for fortune. Yep.
Settling down in a new life and exploring the undiscovered country.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of that is kind of the stuff I grew up with.
Yeah.
So like thinking about it, I was exposed to it at a very young age, and I guess I was gonna say I didn't really like it, but there were ones I did specifically really enjoy.
Yeah.
And then as I got older, I kind of fell off.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think it was around end of high school, going into college.
Yeah.
I kind of started finding like there was that new wave of Western remakes,
Yeah.
like your 310 to Yumas, your True Grit, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That
man.
really,
Yeah.
really those I really liked, and just kind of continued that love of Western, and that's I don't know. I think it also doesn't hurt that it reminds me of my grandpa, and
Yep.
like that's something that he like. I think both my grandpas really, really loved Westerns.
A lot of people's grandpas loved. Like that was
Their Marvel.
Yeah. Well, again, Sylvester Stallone and Schwarzenegger of their day were like Clint Eastwood and John Wayne. You know.
Yep. Yep.
Like those were like the two big guys, and then of course you've got your Grace Kelly and whatchamacallit, or who am I thinking of?
What does Grace Kelly have to do with Westerns?
I was thinking of Gene Kelly. I think I was thinking of Gene Kelly.
What does he have to do with Westerns?
I could no like. Who am I thinking of?
I don't know. Who are you thinking of?
I'm getting my names mixed up here. Jimmy Stewart.
Yeah, Jimmy Stewart was.
Jimmy Stewart's still westerns. Yeah, I don't know where I got Grace Kelly from. Oh no, I know exactly. I got it crossed in my brain because friggin' Hans Gruber has that line at the end of Die Hard where he's like, "But this time John Wayne does not ride off into the sunset with Grace Kelly," and then John's like, "That's Gary Cooper, asshole." Yeah, I got that mixed up in my brain. I think I meant to say Gary Cooper, and I said Grace Kelly instead.
I mean, but if there's a relationship between Grace Kelly and Western, I just don't know. Like I'm uninformed, especially on a lot of the older Westerns.
Yeah.
For me, it's a genre that's more movie to movie for me than an overall. Like I'm not like obsessed with watching every single Western that comes out.
Mm-hmm.
But if a movie is good or a show is good, and like for me, it's a lot of if the subject matter is again might versus right.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's like it's the gunslinger standing up for the little guy, and like
Yeah. There's bad guys in town, and the good guy comes to set things right, like that classic plot.
Yeah, like that's the kind of stuff for me I really like. It's the it's the outgunned versus the guys with all the force, and yeah, like it's
Yeah.
just it's a cliche classic story, but like it works.
100%. Well, it's like, well, I always like ones with like where it gets a little grayer, as it were. Like again, because you've got like a fistful of dollars, where like Clint Eastwood is the protagonist of the story, but he's also like he's kind of there because he's looking for his own profits,
Yeah.
and then I love it that like his solution is basically just to like pit both sides against each other.
If it works, it works.
Absolutely, he kind of like manipulates them, um, and like it's of course, yeah, the Magnificent Seven is probably like the most like probably the most popular example of that, I would say. Where it's
Which
like,
is again, that one's a fascinating study because it's it's the reinterpretation of Seven Samurai. So it's
Yeah.
like it's not technically a Western story, but it's become so synonymous with Westerns.
absolutely. And like you get a lot of that, like like stories of like Ronin samurai translate into westerns very well because it's
So it turns into the lone gunman, right?
absolutely, and like you see it a couple times because there's another samurai movie called Yojimbo, which I believe got remade into a Clint Eastwood movie. I want to say Hang 'Em High is the one that's like remade from that. So you see that a lot. And what I thought was cool, I still need to see this. But fairly recently, within the last decade, there was a Japanese remake of Unforgiven, where they made it into a samurai movie. So it's kind of pulling the reverse. I'd really like to see that. Like,
I think that's just kind of cool. Again, it's showing the different styles of cinema influencing each other.
absolutely. And in a lot of you see kind of in a lot of media where like westerns and samurai movies kind of get like mixed together as well, especially like if you look into like I mean there's a lot of sci-fi that kind of does that where like you see influences from both.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really cool. And that's another thing to discuss as well is the like movies that are like western adjacent, you know? Cuz you got stuff like I wouldn't say Tremors is a western, but it absolutely has those same western
It has
motifs.
westernisms is in it.
Yeah. Like it's the small desert town and like them having to band together against a common foe. Like you got a lot of motifs there.
I'm just distracted because your glasses are so dirty.
Yeah, I gotta clean them. These are new. I'm still very much getting used to them. I was fine, and then I worked outside in the cold, and I went to go cover my mouth, and suddenly fog, and I'm like, oh, so that's what that feels like.
Yep, that's what it's been like for 27 years.
But I can see now and read, which is great. You never realize how blind you are until you actually get your eyes checked.
Yes, you don't, do you?
No, you don't. I can't imagine why I wouldn't have done it sooner.
Yeah, it sounds like you should thank
I
somebody.
really wish somebody had told me.
Really?
I should have gotten my eyes checked
Really, thanks.
on multiple occasions.
Yeah, who would have done that?
You know who you are.
Who's that?
You know who you are.
No, I want it recorded. I want this recorded.
Ethan Hill is the reason I discovered that I was blind. Okay, is that what you wanted?
Yes. Thank you.
But no, like, I guess similar to you, like, again, like you talk about your grandfather, like, I always remember going over to my grandparents' place and, like, there'd be, like, the movie cabinet, and just, like, and again, like, I inherited my grandparents' VHS collection, and, like, yeah, 90% of it is, like, John Wayne westerns, and there's Bonanza in there as well, Gunsmoke. Lots of Clint Eastwood. He had like the dual VHS of Good and Bad and the Ugly.
Did he have anything from the Rootinest Tootinest Cowboy in the Wild Wild West?
I don't think he did. I actually don't think he did.
There's none of the Toy Story films? What?
I can't say he did. I'm very much looking forward to the animated adaptation because they did Lightyear, so I'm looking forward to Pixar doing like a
Woody's
full-on.
Roundup?
Yes,
I'd love that. I'd be down.
that'd be so damn great to see like Pixar do like a spaghetti western.
But I want, if it is, I want Woody to be voiced by Colin Hanks.
Ah,
Because then you're doing that tradition of changing it,
yeah.
but then you also have the tradition of like, following the father's footsteps. I think that would be really good. So Pixar, hear me out. That's all I want. Woody's Roundup, Colin Hanks.
Write him a check.
Yeah, there we go. That one's for free. That one's on
That
me.
one's on.
The first one's for free.
Of course, you gotta leave them wanting more.
Yes. Honestly, I never really watched Clint Eastwood films.
I ended up watching a couple.
The first one I saw was The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and
Really?
I was in high school.
Okay.
That was the first time I saw any Clint Eastwood. Like,
Honestly, I think I ended up watching like the Dollars trilogy. I ended up watching it in order because a buddy of mine just got like
buddy of yours, huh?
a buddy of mine. Pull that shit up, Jamie.
Don't get sued.
That's crazy. You ever done an ice bath?
No.
That's crazy. Anyway, so I ended up watching them in order. So like, yeah, a few dollars more, or yeah, a fistful of dollars, then a few dollars more, and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. And like, controversially, I can accept like The Good, the Bad, the Ugly is the best movie of the three for sure. But like, for a few dollars more is 100% my favorite of the three.
That's fair.
Yeah, I just really like it. Plot-wise, it feels like it has a bit more in common with, like, the kind of action movies that I was watching at the time. And seeing Lee Van Cleef kind of playing against type and being more of a heroic character was really cool. And it's fun seeing the contrast between Clint Eastwood's, like, rough and tumble, like dirty bounty hunter character, and then Lee Van Cleef, who's just like a professional and he's well dressed and everything. Like it's a fun combo. It almost has a bit of like a buddy cop thing going on with it that I really enjoyed. But like obviously The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is the superior movie, but it comes down to a preference thing for me. But it's like there was always a thing when like I would watch a lot of like older John Wayne westerns. And I specifically remember watching McClintock because I got shown that one because it was like more of a comedy, you know?
Yeah.
And like there was just something about those movies that like they didn't necessarily click for me.
No.
But what's up?
No, finish your thought, and then I might unlock something else for you.
Okay. But like a lot of the John Wayne westerns, like it always like even when I was a kid, like there was always like a bit of like a clean dryness to me. Like some of them were pretty like obviously legitimately really good. But I would even say I preferred the spaghetti western ones that I watched where they had a bit more of like a grit to them. Like your Once Upon a Time in the Wests and the Magnificent Seven, that kind of thing. Like the older John Wayne ones always felt a little cleaner, but again, that's kind of the range you get with like not just like westerns, but a lot of different genres where it's like you have like more like the cleaner version of it, and then like someone says like, oh yeah, no, this is the like the grittier version of it where it's a little bloodier, you know. So, but yes, you had a thought.
Because there's another Western character who I was exposed to at a very young age, who I feel like you also were, just based on our conversations. Do you remember Deadeye?
I don't think I do. Who is Deadeye?
Well, he was a character played by a famous comedian way back in the way back in the 1940s, black and white.
Mm-hmm.
We both talked about him.
Jimmy Stewart?
No, comedian.
Comedian, oh.
Played other characters like Clem Hopper.
Don Knotts?
Nope.
Well,
Although Don Knotts was also.
Yep, the shakiest guy in the West.
Yes.
Which is
Apple
another one I
Dumpling
got
Gang.
shown.
Apple Dumpling Gang was also probably one of the first ones I see it.
Okay.
But no, Red Skeleton.
Oh, Red Skeleton.
And
Okay.
he had a sheriff character called Deadeye.
Ah, okay. So I watched a little bit of Red Skeleton growing up, but not a lot of it. Oh, geez. Apparently I'm cosplaying him today.
Yeah, straight up.
Yeah, if you look up Red Skeleton Deadeye, apparently I decided to cosplay him today.
Skeleton.
Skeleton?
No, skeleton.
Skeleton?
There's no skeleton.
Skeleton? Red Skellington?
No, Red Skeleton. He was an old comedian I grew up watching a bunch. I genuinely cannot tell you how well his comedy has aged because I haven't watched him in a few years. But
Yep, you might be given a risky recommendation.
I might be, but I remember him being very clean. He was a very clean
good,
comic.
clean, fun. Yeah, always remember his the clown makeup character. I always remember that.
That's what I'm just wondering: is it clown or is it blackface? Is
I
it
really
clown
hope-
or is it blackface?
I really hope it's a clown.
It looks like a clown, but I'm also not going to say. I'm not going to be the one to choose that.
Yeah, no, 100%. Better safe than sorry, you know.
Yes. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, that's another character that again I grew up with. There was actually a sketch he did with John Wayne, where John Wayne played his true great character.
Ah, Richard Cockburn.
Yeah. Came with the eye patch and everything.
Oh,
And I
man.
I want to say Deadeye had an eye patch on too, but he kept switching eyes.
That's great. Yeah. No, actually, yeah, True Grit's another interesting one because of I saw the original, of course, before I saw the remake. I know technically it's a new adaptation of the book, but the original True Grit is
I've never seen it.
Really?
I've only seen the remake.
It's good. It is legitimately a good movie, and John Wayne, to an extent, John Wayne winning the Oscar for that performance is what people say, where it's he basically got that Oscar as a acknowledgement of his career.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think it is, compared to his other characters, it's a little rougher around the edges, and it is a good performance. But I will say, again, the Coen brothers version of it, it's just a really good movie, and that story, that version of it, as well as Unforgiven, to me, they feel a bit more like movies about the death of the end of an era, where it's the last ride of the great gunslinger.
Mm-hmm.
I always found the idea of that kind of story very compelling. Again, Unforgiven gets brought up a lot these days with different movies that come out. Again, Logan, I would say, is very much like a post-Western type of movie, and it's very much aping off of Unforgiven. But to me, it's a bit more within the context of the Western genre. It works because it's the death of the Old West and kind of the beginning of the more modern era. That's a lot of what did you ever play Red Dead Redemption?
I started to, but I was playing it on 360 when it was the 4 discs.
Oh geez, yeah,
and
that was me too.
The load times just weren't good.
Yeah, it's one I want to go back to and try again. But
I want to, but I've been told several times, actually within the past couple weeks, because I'm working on a Western right now, which is fun. So all of us are kind of just in this weird Western mood where it's oh, this is kind of cool, and Red Dead has come up a lot, and I've been told we can play Red Dead 2 first.
Yeah, it's a prequel.
Yes, so I might do that before I go back to Red Dead.
I've heard great things about Red Dead 2. It's literally like it again, I've told you about like my thing with open world games. Like if I don't get hooked in immediately, I just will stop playing. Because it just you get overwhelmed and you just don't want to play anymore.
Mm-hmm. But I think westerns definitely allow themselves to be in open world kind of games.
Oh, absolutely, and I think it works. There are really great like Western games that follow a bit more of a traditional formula. Like there was Gun that was also on the like early days of the 360, if I remember correctly.
I don't think I've ever played another Western game.
Really, because there's the what are those ones? There's three of them, but it's like they're like oh man, this is gonna bug me now. They're really good. Like they're like a trilogy of like Western shooters. Someone in the audience is gonna know what I'm talking about, but like I'm gonna have to look this up.
Yeah, I got nothing. There's apparently just not a lot for Western video games.
Call of Juarez, that's what it is. The Call of Juarez games are supposed to be really good.
What's the thing that's fascinating to me with that is you think that, especially with how popular first-person shooters are, or just shooters in general, Westerns would be like the perfect setting for a game like that.
Oh, absolutely, and like it's rather untapped in the same way that like up until fairly recently World War One has not been tapped for like shooters, and like the fear I think is like, oh well, there's no automatic weapons and like the traditional technologies, but 100% you could do some really cool. I would love to see like a Call of Duty style game done, like a multiplayer game, but with like for like the Western genre, because you do a lot of cool maps and shit for that. You could still have zombie type modes. I mean, actually, funny enough, I played Red Dead Undead Nightmare all the way through, but I never finished Red Dead Redemption.
That's hilarious.
You could get the horses of the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse in that game. Like, they'd just be running around and you could, like, catch them and tame them. So that was really cool, too.
I know it's never going to come back, but a part of me wants there to be, like, a Deadliest Warrior VR game. Where it's like first person, you get to pick a warrior, and then you have to try to fight.
Well, you just pick the cowboy every time.
Yeah, it doesn't not that easy.
That's fair. That was like the second you had a pirate in that game, it was broken because you just shoot the guns 3 times and you would just win, except against the Spartans because of their shield. But yeah. Anyway, yeah, like there's a lot of there's also one. Again, we're talking about like kind of like twisted westerns.
No.
But there's one called Dark Watch, which I've brought this game up before, and nobody knows what I'm talking about. But it's like it's a supernatural western where your character gets bitten by a vampire, and you have to try and like you get recruited into this organization called the Dark Watch, who are basically in charge of like killing these monsters and all that. Very Van Helsing-esque.
Yeah.
But you're a vampire within their ranks, and throughout the game you actually get to like make moral decisions, and based on your decisions you either get like good vampire powers or evil vampire powers, and then it completely changes the end boss of the game as well.
So it's KOTOR but with vampires and cowboys.
Not nearly as complex or well made, but has a similar idea to it. But like it had all the like kind of the Western staples. You had your revolvers, but everything was like steampunkized, and all the weapons had like blades on them. So you had like a 4-barrel shotgun, and then there was an axe for the handle. You had your lever action rifles. Your grenades were dynamite, like kind of fun stuff like that. So you 100% could do it, but also based on the fact that when I say Dark Watch, I'm the only person who remembers it. It probably ain't coming back anytime soon.
Jesse Prosser adapts Dark Watch into a movie.
I'm gonna do it. I'm sure the rights are very cheap.
Well, I just remember that there was also comics, Western comics, because my dad had some.
Oh yeah.
It's like the Rawhide Kid was one that I have, and again, Lone Ranger. Lone Ranger pops up a lot in my life. Like, genuinely is one of my favorite properties.
Well, I know the movie is one of your favorites of all time.
It's not hard to make the Lone Ranger, but apparently it's impossible.
I knew that the Lone Ranger would get brought up at some point in this episode.
I feel like I've talked about it before on the show, but I won't stop talking about it. Because I've tried watching it 5 times now, and I get in the first 20 minutes, and I'm like, no, this is awful, and I turn it off.
Ethan, I don't think you're giving the adaptation a fair chance.
If I would have seen it in theaters, I would have been forced to sit through it, but I have choices in life now.
Wait, so you've never watched it all the way through?
I have never watched it all the way through. No.
I've watched it all the way.
No, I don't. I bet you it doesn't get better by the end.
It doesn't.
No, that's what I thought.
I'd argue it gets worse.
I would rather rewatch The Green Hornet. And I hated The Green Hornet.
But Ethan, isn't that a sequel to The Lone Ranger? What I don't know if you're gonna know what happened in the movie. If you in the Green Hornet,
what are you talking about?
Isn't the Green Hornet like a descendant of the Lone Ranger?
Yeah. Yeah.
Isn't that canon?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and it doesn't really have anything to do with anything. The Green Hornet movie with Seth Rogen?
Yeah,
Was he
Seth
the Green
Rogen.
Hornet? Yeah.
With Joe Rogan.
No, and Seth Rogen apologized for it, and I appreciate that. I appreciate, because he wanted to do it straight up. He wanted to do straight up
he didn't
detective story.
Because he didn't want to play the...
No, and like the studio's like, no man, you gotta play the Green Hornet, and you gotta make it a comedy. And he's like, but that's awful. And they're like, well, it's the only way it's getting made, and look where we are.
That's so sad. The thing is, like, now, if he tried to do it now, 100%,
Oh,
he'd be
100%.
able to, because he's got so much more pull.
Seth Rogen, if you still have the rights, please make it right. Make it good. I believe in you, sir. You're amazing. Call me.
For the boys alone, like.
But it's one of those things of like, it's, if I had to choose again, because I've seen Green Hornet once, and I did not like it, but I would watch it again before The Lone Ranger.
Fair enough. At least you got Christoph Waltz in that movie.
Yes. At least some parts were enjoyable.
Yeah.
And Seth Rogen is a joy.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's not the problem with that movie.
No.
It's everything kind of surrounding the movie.
To say the least. Kato was well done.
Yes.
Kato was definitely the best part of that movie.
And that's the thing. I can't even say Tonto and the Lone Ranger was the best part of that movie.
Nope.
Because it was also just not a good choice. What were you thinking?
That was just so upsetting. You haven't even finished the movie.
No, because it's been done better about 20 more times.
That's fair.
There's this really interesting TV version of it, which breaks a lot of rules, and it had Chad Michael Murray in it as Lone Ranger, and it breaks like all the rules, like you see his face, all that kind of stuff. But the interpretation was so fascinating that it worked.
It overrides the...
And that was a TV movie.
It's
not a big budget. It's not like earth-shattering.
Would you say it's comparable to the Michael Keaton Batman?
For what?
As far as like it breaks some of the rules, but it's still a decent adaptation.
In that sense, yes. Like quality-wise, no.
Okay, not as good as Michael.
No, because Michael Keaton's Batman transformed Batman. It informed like the Batman animated series and a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah.
No one else that I've talked to has seen this TV movie of the Lone Ranger.
Fair enough.
No one talks about the Lone Ranger. No one cares about him anymore. And I blame that movie. I blame that movie. You could have had a really good Western character. You could have done some really cool stuff.
And just wasn't.
No, just it wasn't great. Not good.
Fair enough.
He's not that hard to mess up. He's not. There's rules. They're written down online. You can Google this. And you don't even need to keep all the rules. You can break some of them.
Because I heard the original idea for the movie was he was gonna like fight a werewolf or something. Like it was gonna be like just like a Lone Ranger adventure.
That's weird, but it makes sense.
He was gonna fight a werewolf, and there was a train involved.
He's got silver bullets. That would have been something interesting.
Yep. Like I would have watched that movie.
It never that's the thing. The original show never got that weird. Because the original show was literally the same plot. It's basically actually the comparable show.
There's the bad guy. Well,
if you want a show that's comparable to the Lone Ranger, it's the A-Team.
Yeah, fair enough.
It's this guy who was always thought to be an outlaw, but people kind of like low-key know that he's not an outlaw, but he wears a mask, so they're like, what kind of outlaw wears a mask? Just like the A-Team, they're like, hey, aren't you criminals? Yeah, but we actually help people.
Yep.
For money, but we help people.
Yeah. I mean, we gotta eat.
Exactly.
BA needs 300 grams of protein a day to maintain his muscle mass.
Exactly. And you could even argue that, A-Team does have a lot of Western vibes to them as well.
Yeah, they're, like, the traveling mercenaries, like...
Well, it's...
Well, that comes up,
That's a whole genre within itself, is Westerns that aren't Westerns.
Yeah.
But specifically, I'll finish this thought, then we can move on to that.
Absolutely.
But that's kind of... It becomes very formulaic, like the A-Team, where every single episode, every week, is like, well, there's the bad guys, the Lone Ranger comes into town, they counter the bad guy, they stop the bad guy, and then they go on to the next town.
And the theme song plays, and everyone's happy.
Yeah, the William Tell Overture.
Mm-hmm.
Dun, dun, dun.
Oh, yeah. They do play that in the movie, by the way.
At the very end, probably.
Right before the last action sequence, he goes hi-ho silver, and then they play the song. So Ethan's great adaptation.
I need you to do me a favor. I need you to make a fist. And I just need you to wind up and just...
Well, I'll knock you out there.
But no, there's a whole, to me, there's also this whole genre of movies that's it's Westerns that aren't Westerns.
Right.
And so it's Westerns. The Assault on Precinct 13 is, the big one.
Oh, absolutely. Well, it's a remake of Rio Bravo, and, unashamedly so. Because John Carpenter, as we discussed, he got into movies to want to make Westerns, but by the time he got into making movies, nobody wanted Westerns anymore.
I honestly would love it if he came out of retirement
and did a Western.
I would love to see John Carpenter's final film be a Western.
That'd be great. I mean, like a supernatural Western.
No, just a Western.
Just a straight up Western.
Whatever he wants to make. If
yep.
I had,
he's John Carpenter.
Look, if I had millions of dollars and I was a studio and I knew better, I knew what people would want to see. Just saying, no one's watching this, but if they are, I would take a wheelbarrow of money up to John Carpenter and say, "Hey,
Ethan,
Westerns are in right now.
Ethan, he already gets wheelbarrows of money, and he doesn't have to do anything.
Yeah,
he just has to say, yeah, you can remake Escape from New York.
Yeah, but you can come up to him and be like,
I'm gonna keep smoking weed and watching basketball.
How would you like to do that and direct a Western?"
I mean, I'd love that.
How would you like to come up how would you like to come up to Calgary and make a Western?
I just love to see John Carpenter score a Western, really.
He'd do both. He could do both.
How
much would you try to get on that show?
Well, of course.
If John Carpenter made a Western in Calgary.
Obviously I would. He's my favorite director, Ethan. What kind of question is that?
Yeah, it's true.
But if you look, a lot of his leading characters are archetypes of
cowboys.
Yeah.
Snake Plissken.
Snake Plissken straight up was originally supposed to be I guess the studio wanted Charles Bronson, but then this was again post Death Wish 2 or 3, something like that, and Bronson was old, and he's yeah, that would have probably been okay, but I'm really glad Kurt did it. You kind of need somebody with a bit of
youth.
Yes, to pull off that movie.
Well, in his heyday, Bronson in both Magnificent Seven and Once Upon a Time in the West.
Oh yeah, he's another one of the big ones. Well, again, as
I saw Yul Brynner in Westworld before I saw him in Magnificent Seven.
Oh man!
Actually, and before that, I saw him in The King and I. So my context for this guy who got known as the Man in Black.
Yep.
the first thing I saw him in was The King of Saigon in, I think it's Saigon, Siam, King of Siam.
The King of Saigon.
That's a whole different musical.
the
Either way, I saw him in The King and I first, and
Yep.
like that was, like
very different character,
etc., etc., etc. And then I got to know him as a cyborg.
Yep, a cyborg cowboy.
Yeah, and then finally saw him in like the Magnificent Seven role.
Because Westworld came out after,
From what I understand, yes.
if I remember correctly. So like that would have been them playing on the fact that he was in the Magnificent Seven, which like man, like again, Magnificent Seven, 100% was like, I don't, maybe it's a bad comparison, but it was the Expendables of its era with the actors that were in the Magnificent Seven.
It's true.
Because like you had McQueen, Bronson was in that one too, right?
Owen Wilson was in it.
Lightning McQueen.
Yeah, Magnificent Seven was 1960, and Westworld was 1973.
Yep, and like I would also say Westworld. I mean that's kind of the point, but like Westworld, I would say is like a Western adjacent, and that's kind of the point of it.
No, because what Westworld is it's a prototype for Jurassic Park.
Yes, well,
It's even Michael
Crichton. Yeah,
Yeah, but it's a prototype for Jurassic Park. It is just, hey, come to this place and you get to have a fun time at our theme park, and then everything there tries to kill you.
Mm-hmm.
Because not just the Wild West that tries to kill them. We're talking gladiators. We're talking, I don't remember.
Well, yeah,
because
the Westworld is just one of multiple like.
Yeah, it's like took Disneyland's outlay of like different themes within a theme park.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fascinating movie. I love it.
Oh, absolutely! Like it's not. It's similar to like the original Planet of the Apes, where it's like
It's charming.
it's charming, 100%.
Shoot, what were we talking about? What was my thought?
Mm-hmm. Oh, like movies that are like Western adjacent.
No, it was Magnificent Seven, Expendables.
Like the ensemble Western.
I think so. And I think, but again, so speaking on Magnificent Seven, bluntly, it is my favorite Western.
Yeah.
It's my favorite Western story. I just love every interpretation of it that I've seen so far.
Yeah. No, like Magnificent Seven is a great movie.
But for me, I can agree with that with the first one. But then the remake, it lent itself to like it was a bunch of heavy hitters.
Oh, absolutely.
But also, they didn't rely on the heavy hitters to like sell the story.
Yeah, it was just like they just got good actors to play those characters.
And it's fun. And like people who poo-poo it because it's not as good as the original. It's not meant to be a remake of the original. It's a new interpretation, and I'm happy that that's what it is.
Yeah.
I'm happy that I can watch that movie and have a different experience than watching the original. Just like I can have a different experience from watching Seven Samurai.
Absolutely.
And it's like, there's apparently a sci-fi one in the 80s, Battle Beyond the Stars.
Yep, the Roger Corman movie.
I'm really excited to watch that because like I feel like it's not going to be great, but like I love that story enough that I'm curious.
Could be fun.
And then there's a TV show with Michael Biehn.
Yes, which I think Sonny Landham's in it.
I think so.
Or is Sonny Landham just in one of the sequels?
I have
no,
idea.
Sonny Landham is in the sequel to The Dirty Dozen, which I have not seen. That's what I'm thinking.
The Dirty Half Dozen?
The Dirty Half Dozen. The Dirtier Dozen.
Dirty Rides Again.
Dirty Dozen 2, The Dirtier Dozen.
Amazing. Well, and that's another
The Dirty Dozen, The Baker's Dozen.
So this brings us right into that what we were talking about, where it's like Western films that aren't Westerns.
Yeah.
The Dirty Dozen is a war movie, but I would consider it a Western.
Yeah.
Whereas The Great Escape, because those two often get compared, The Great Escape is straight up, it's Hogan's Heroes, but with a serious tone.
Yes.
Like
much
Hogan's Heroes,
more serious.
Hogan's Heroes is the comedy version of The Great Escape.
It's got a very cavalier attitude of World War II prison camps.
Yes.
Ooh.
But The Great Escape is just phenomenal.
Yes.
But that's not what we're here to talk about.
No, 100%.
But
yeah.
The Dirty Dozen, with the type of characters they have, with how they bring them all together.
A lot of the same cast, even.
It's very Western-y.
Yeah. Well, I think like Kelly's Heroes, which is another World War II movie starring Clint Eastwood and Donald Sutherland's also in it, but like it has a very like Western-y feel to it. Because again, as the Westerns were kind of coming out of fashion, like the action movie and the war movie were kind of becoming more and more popular as well. So they took the formula of like how Western films were, and that slowly got translated into the action film. In the same way that like when action films and martial arts films were starting to like come out of style, those plots and ideas started getting translated into superhero movies.
It's true, and it's kind of fascinating to see how that, like, I would say all the major movies of the time that they came out, like the big blockbusters, at the core, they're all action movies.
Yes.
But it depends on the type of action movies.
100%.
And I think the 80s really kind of defined what an action movie was.
Oh, absolutely. Like, that was the era of the action star.
But, like, the thing is, a lot of those action stars would have been in Westerns. If cowboys didn't go out of style.
Yes.
Cowboys were replaced by cops.
Yes. 100%. They were replaced by cops and by mercenaries and soldiers.
Which is funny, because a lot of, like, the cowboys were cops, because they were sheriffs. And
yeah. Well, again, like, Chuck Norris, like, famously kind of did both.
Well, I was going to say, war movies were only a specific time, but no, the wars just changed.
Yeah.
Because war movies were always kind of popular, I'd say starting in the 60s, maybe even the 50s.
Yeah.
Like, after the horrors of what went on in World War II, they kind of calmed down, but then, like, it felt like the war movies that came out were always about the war that they had passed, not about the current one that went on.
Oh, of course.
Well,
they didn't really start, like, I mean, there was, like, Vietnam movies starting, like, towards the end of the 70s, of course.
Yeah.
But, like, they started, like, coming out way more in the 80s.
Yeah, and then the 90s, and...
Yeah.
And then you didn't really get movies about, like, overseas until the mid-2000s, and...
Yeah. No, and then they came out hard.
Well, Iron Man.
Yup. No, absolutely.
But it's fascinating to me that, like, again, within that time, Westerns just disappeared. There was a couple here and there.
Yeah. Like, again, like...
It kind of resurged in the 90s.
Yeah, like you were talking about with, like, a bunch of the... Well, like, the early 2000s, like, they did a bunch of remakes of some
No,
of
like,
those
even in the
older ones.
90s, like, you think Tombstone and Wyatt Earp.
Absolutely. Which, like, Tombstone, 100% is my favorite Western.
Yeah.
Like, it has probably one of the best ensemble casts of all time. It's just, there's so many great scenes. It's fun, but it does get dramatic.
That's why I stand by Tombstone and Wyatt Earp are good companion pieces. Because, like, Wyatt Earp leads up to a certain point, and then Tombstone finishes it off.
Yeah. Still gotta watch Wyatt Earp.
I know, you just hate Kevin Costner.
So much. That's why Untouchables is one of my favorites. It's clearly because I hate Kevin Costner.
Even that one feels like a bit of a Western at points.
Yeah. Well, it's like, yeah, it's again, it's...
Ba-da-bum. Yeah, and
I just want to watch Untouchables.
I just want to listen to... I keep pronouncing his name wrong, but I know it's like Ennio
Morricone.
Yeah. His music in general is untouched for Westerns. Like...
Well, yeah, like, the theme of the good, the bad, and the ugly is, like, the definitive, like... Like, you hear that and you're like, oh... Oh, Western. Like, anytime they do a parody where they, like, bring up Westerns, it's something that sounds like something Ennio Morricone would have produced.
Those guitar hits, it's so good. It's, again, there's just...
Yep.
there's a lot of good. Unfortunately, there's a lot of bad within westerns as well.
Yes.
We'll get to that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, western adjacent films. We keep mentioning it, and then we steer away from it.
Well, on TV shows as well, like Firefly, straight up is a western.
Mm-hmm.
Like it, like basically, if you switch the time period, it's a post Civil War western story.
It gets weird when you think about it that way.
Yeah.
I don't like thinking about it that way.
Yeah, considering that, like,
They'd be the Confederacy. Yep.
yep.
Yeah, the good guys are the Confederacy.
Well, doesn't Mal in one episode literally say like, "We will rise again" or something like that?
Something like that.
It's just
know.
like,
It gets weird, but
Yeah.
you know,
Well, it's
the
a fun-
intention wasn't there,
yeah, but it's a fun story.
or was it?
I think it is. Firefly's pretty solid.
No, I said the intention wasn't there.
Oh, the intention, yeah.
Oh, you think the intention was there? Wow.
Oh,
Jesse Prosser says the South will rise again. You
okay.
you
Gotta
racist, you monster.
I never said that. Yeah, so there's that.
I had a point to make about Western adjacent. I think Western adjacent media and why it works to have themes of a Western in a non-Western setting.
Yeah.
Is because those themes are just, it's so, like, and again, specifically the good Westerns and not the shady stuff that has not aged well.
Mm-hmm.
But it's such a core ideal, I guess,
Yeah.
if that makes sense, with the idea of might versus right, the idea of standing up for the little guy,
Well, like the
helping out those in need,
Mhm.
and
well, if you think about it, like the Mad Max movies are straight up like it's post-apocalyptic, but they are westerns at their core, because it's like the world basically reset to that kind of era where it's like it's a weird mix of like feudalism and like
And
the
outlaws.
Wild West.
Yeah.
Except they've got cars and guns and shit. So I'd say that definitely would fall into that category.
yeah, and again, I think like that's why it's worked so well. That's why you can go back and have Western, like you can always have Westerns return to the big screen.
Yeah.
And I don't think they're gonna go away anytime soon, or I don't think they're ever gonna go away full time. And I don't think they ever have. I know people have said they've lost popularity, but then a good one comes out of nowhere and just shakes it up again.
100%. Well, again, like I mean, two of Tarantino's movies were like big popular westerns.
And at the end of the day, they're fun. Like Westerns can be fun.
Mm-hmm. There's just something. Again, it's like you do need to acknowledge certain things about the old West if you're making a western nowadays. I feel like just like the realities of the time, and I think that's very important. But it's like you could still have that like the gunslinger character. You could still have the town in distress. You could still have these things.
Well, it's realities of the time, but also not whitewashing the era as well.
100%.
Making every single cowboy just a white guy from out east and stuff like that is incorrect.
100%.
And there were a lot of atrocities that happened, and there were a lot of terrible things that were happening too, but there was a lot more people settling and coming over here than just the white guys.
Yes, 100%.
And that's where it becomes a bit of like, not a dance, like it's not really tricky, it's just a matter of like, again, pulling your head out of the
rose-tinted goggles.
Idealistic outlook that they had on the Wild West in the 1950s, which led to a lot of problems.
Yes.
Like, again, talk about First Nations treatments within film.
Yeah.
Is like, again, it's just a bunch of guys with tinted skin, you know, and not bringing in people to actually consult on how things would have been.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's problematic. It is.
Yeah.
But then that's why, again, you have the good Westerns from that era, which don't lean into those kind of stereotypes and don't lean into those things.
100%.
But also, again, when reviewing that media, like all media, it's
within the context of the time it was made.
We're within the context of the time that it's made, and also just being aware of that. You can't erase the history, and you
No.
can't erase what happened. But it's, again, keeping an open mind and awareness to what it was and why it was not okay.
100%.
And then moving forward and doing better. And that's with any genre of film. But Westerns, I guess, like, in my opinion, Westerns are kind of where the worst of it is seen.
Yeah.
And that's why, like, for me, like, I've been very lucky and haven't been exposed to a lot of that because I haven't watched. I know John Wayne films are very problematic, and John Wayne as a person was very problematic.
Yes.
I never really watched. I can't name a single John Wayne film that I have seen. I knew him as a personality, and that's about it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's like you... Like, you can't deny that John Wayne was iconic within Westerns, but I think it's important also to acknowledge the problematic nature of him and the characters that he played.
Well, and it's the same thing, I think, also with, like, Clint Eastwood a bit, because I know he's a bit problematic at times, too, just with the way he talks and the way that some of his ideals are.
Yeah.
But it does not, again, he is still a good filmmaker and had an impact on Hollywood and the cinema the way it was. And that's,
absolutely.
And that's, I think, the biggest shame. Like, even Jimmy Stewart. I love Jimmy Stewart, but I looked into some of his politics and I'm like, oh no. Oh no, Jimmy, no, Jimmy, no. And, like, that's the trickiest part about being, like, handling Westerns. And then, so, like, actually, if you want to talk about like, the conversation of problematic Westerns would not be complete without talking about Blazing Saddles.
Yes.
Which I think is the least problematic Western. And like, so here's my, like, I think we've talked about it, because have we discussed Mel Brooks? Like, I know I've mentioned Mel Brooks in the podcast.
I don't think we have, but I almost think the man deserves his own episode.
Absolutely.
Stay tuned for the Mel Brooks
I would love
episode.
It. The thing that makes Blazing Saddles so great and so divisive is and this is where it gets really dicey. Within the spectrum of people who love it, there are people who love it because of the commentary it's making on Westerns and on Western culture and on the treatment of people of color within Westerns. And then there are people who think it's hilarious because they say the N-word a lot.
Yeah, which is the wrong...
You're taking away the wrong message.
Absolutely.
That's not why it's funny. Like, that's not the joke. The joke is, and the commentary is, again, Hollywood's ideals on Westerns. That's why at the end of the movie, they break through the screen, they end up in a Hollywood backlot.
Yeah.
But if it gets to me, it's one of the perfect Westerns. It feels like a Western through and through.
Yep.
It pokes fun at the genre while also paying homage and respect to it.
Well, again, that's the magic of Mel Brooks's parodies is like Robin Hood Men in Tights feels like a swashbuckling fantasy movie. Spaceballs feels like a 1970s science fiction film.
Do you consider Robin Hood fantasy? This is a different conversation. I'm not want to get into it deep, but like because it's fiction, but like
kind of like it.
But it's like there's nothing really fantasy about it. But like I know what you mean.
Yeah, like it's
because like what genre would it fit under?
Yeah, like what it would like.
Could be Western. It could be like a pre-Western Western.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like there are
Remember
pre-Western.
when Russell Crowe played Robin Hood?
I try not to.
It's just the weirdest thing.
He should play the sheriff, not.
That's what it was supposed to be.
That's what he signed up to do.
That would have been amazing. I like Nottingham, like with like Robin Hood as like this like shadowy figure that he's trying to track down,
and his descent into madness.
That would be a really cool movie. Instead, no, we're gonna get Russell Crowe to play Robin Hood. That'd be my first choice.
I don't think it was Russell Crowe's first choice.
It was Russell Crowe's first. Like, actually, no, I think the studio specifically wanted Russell Crowe to play Robin Hood, and it got changed into that, and it's like, oh, are you sure? I think maybe Friar Tuck, but
But yes, like the thing with Mel Brooks' comedies is always been a good mix of paying homage while also poking fun.
Absolutely.
And again, Blazing Saddles, I think, perfectly encapsulates that. And again, jokes aren't the problematic nature.
Yeah.
It's, again, the jokes are the commentary on that problematic attitude.
Mm-hmm. You know, idiots.
Yep. Morons.
Morons.
Salt of the earth. Common folk. You know.
Morons.
No, and like, I don't, to me it works. And I think, again, a lot of people just on either side take the wrong message from it.
Yes.
Don't look at it for what it actually is. They focus on the negative thing that's face value.
Yeah.
And again, it's so much deeper than just how many times the N-word is said in it.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing with Django had a similar conversation around it, though.
Yes.
Right? And like, and again, that one was specifically dealing with the subject matter of slaves.
Mm-hmm. And like, it's, if you're gonna tell that story, like, that word is going to get brought up multiple times.
One, it's the same thing with it's not a Western at all, but Black Klansman.
Yes.
Specifically, you couldn't tell the same story if you removed certain words.
Yes. Like if you're gonna do it, like, you have to.
But also do it correctly and ask the right people. And,
Yes.
Don't just go and tell those stories.
No, 100%. Like, it's gotta be tasteful and done right. Otherwise,
And kind of your story to tell, and it's have people involved.
yes, 100%.
But no, I think again I love Blazing Saddles, and I don't think I can speak highly enough about Mel Brooks and his films.
It's in my top 10 westerns.
Not shocked. I'm not shocked.
It's well done. Same with Quick and the Dead was also in my top 10, because like that movie's weird, because like it's almost a weird, like, it's like a tournament movie. It's like a martial arts tournament movie, but within the
Wild West.
Yeah, with the paint job of a Wild West film.
Do you ever pick up the 4K or no?
No, I haven't yet. I have to, though. It was like Sam Raimi doing a Western, though. It was just a grand old time.
Now, we should discuss the absolute greatest Western of all time.
Tombstone.
No, we've already mentioned that.
Oh. I could talk about it all day.
It's so wild that it has wild in the title twice.
Are we about to stroll into the Wild Wild West?
I think that is Will Smith's classic Wild West.
Well, that is the end of A Feast of Films.
Look, you can say what you want about Wild Wild West.
Yes, and
it is
I will.
It is not a great film.
No,
it is
it's not.
entertaining as heck.
It's fine.
It's fun.
It's a fun movie. Like
Will Smith, Kevin Kline,
Klinging Clang,
and Kenneth Branagh.
Kenneth Branagh.
I think it is a delightful film.
It does have some like funny moments. Again, I love the perks. Like, don't worry, I'm wearing body armor. If you were going to shoot me in my heart that has loved this country so much. Shoot him in the head. Shit. And of course, the problem is now all I can think of is like when I watch that movie is Kevin Smith's thing on John Peters. And
the giant robot.
Yeah, he's got to fight a giant spider in the third act. And that's all I can think of now with the giant spider. And it's like, man, all right.
Okay, I guess.
Yeah. But it's like, it's not a... Again, it borders on parody.
Mm-hmm. But it's really, really well made.
Mm.
Like...
Again, that's arguable, but it's fun. It's a fun movie
for the time period. I'm sorry, I'm looking at Quick and the Dead, and my brain was like, oh yeah, we're talking about Quick and the Dead, not Wild Wild West.
Yeah, that's an actual good movie.
It's true.
That you skipped over to talk about Wild Wild West.
It's because I'm going alphabetically.
Oh, yes, of course.
And Q comes before W.
Yes.
Well, I think Wild Wild West also suffers from the Men in Black of it all.
Yeah.
Like you can Men in Black is great. Men in Black is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But you can look at Wild Wild West and say, oh, they were trying to do Men in Black
There's-
as a Western.
There's a lot of movies like that. Again, like R.I.P.D. was them trying to do Men in Black, but supernatural.
Yeah.
But there's
There's another one. I can't remember.
I mean, actually, I'll be honest. There's a lot of like post Men in Black movies, and at the end of the day, like I would even argue Hellboy to a certain extent is like post Men in Black, like trying to do a story like that,
Yep.
but supernatural, and succeeds more than R.I.P.D. did for sure.
Absolutely. What was my thought? Darn it.
Mhm.
Have you seen Young Guns?
Yes, a while ago, but I have seen it.
We haven't seen the second one.
No, young.
It's good. It's just as good.
Yep, not as Young Guns.
No, they're still young.
Oh, yeah, that one. Like I remember Young Guns being pretty solid. There's a Western. There's one that I was thinking of.
Maverick?
Yes,
I've never seen it.
Maverick is a very fun movie. Like that one is
Mel Gibson.
Yep, Mel Gibson.
Jodie Foster.
Yep, and
I've never seen it, but I know everyone
and
who's in it.
directed by Richard Donner, and that one is a lot of fun. But like, there's a scene in that movie where like there's these robbers that like break into this place where Mel Gibson is, and the lead one is played by Danny Glover. And they make eye contact, and they have this moment, and then they say, no, and then they make eye contact again. It's just really, really funny. And then it's just like, oh yeah, no. They just go separate ways. And
They go around them. And...
yeah, literally, like nah. But that one, like, it's like, or it is like a Western comedy, and it works really well.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think we're just, at this point, we're just talking about some of our favorites, aren't we?
I don't know. I don't even know. I don't know.
It kind of just devolved into us being like, this Western's really good. Yeah, this Western's really good.
I think the Western genre has a lot to offer. I think there's a lot that we can, especially through a new lens of the 21st century we're in. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I think with a new lens on that kind of stuff, I think there's a lot of stories that we can tell and a lot of perspectives we can tell and add to the mix when discussing Westerns.
Yeah.
And so for me, I'm excited for that genre to keep going forward, for it to be one that people can play in. I just think, again, it's interesting to me how much has changed.
Yeah.
Over the years. And that's where I still think it's a valuable genre for people to look into. And like I wrote it off for years. Like there was a good chunk of time where like I just thought Westerns were lame and they were just a bunch of old people movies. But like,
oh, it's so dry and drawn out, and yeah, but really it's about the tension.
it's something about it that it does have a lot to offer.
Mm-hmm.
And I think specifically with a modern lens, you could explore a lot of new concepts and ideas within that.
Yep. Well, again, like we wouldn't have Star Wars if it wasn't for the Western genre.
Yeah, we wouldn't have a lot of things. Indiana Jones.
Yep.
Back to the Future 3.
100%. Well, of course. We'd still have the first two, but not the third one.
Exactly.
It wouldn't be a trilogy without it.
So yeah, you got a question of the day?
The funny thing is, like, my question of the day was going to be, like, what's your favorite Western? But we already kind of discussed what our favorite Westerns were.
Pew, 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 pew. It's gonna be another thing where we cut out for time for dead air.
Probably, yeah.
So if there's a skip, just ignore it.
Absolutely.
It's not a glitch, it's intentional. I think I got one.
You got one? Alrighty.
Alright, question of the day. If you could remake one Western that hasn't been remade already, what would you pick?
Can I counter with a slight variation on the question?
Sure.
Like, if I could remake a movie as a Western?
I mean, that's 2 questions. Let's do 2 questions.
Let's
If
do
there's- if
let's
there's-
do
if
that.
there's-
So
all
like remake a western and then remake a movie as a western.
yes.
Because like my answer to my version of the question, it's not even, I guess it's not even really remake yet, but like I would love to see a Old West Predator film where it's the Predator hunting.
That's you answering your question.
Yes, it is.
Don't dodge my question.
I'm not gonna dodge your question. I need more time to think of yours.
It's like saying, oh, man, I want to see Godzilla in the Wild West.
I would love to see Godzilla.
Specifically with the cowboy hat and a kerchief on.
Just get Godzilla shows up. Well, guess we're fucked. He's got a cowboy hat.
Ma'am. Does a little dance.
Yep. Yeah, they're playing the music and like, just doing the stomp. It's a western starring Godzilla, but nobody acknowledges that
He's Godzilla. They're just like, oh, the stranger just rode
Like-
into town.
Like it's the classic like face off, but like, yeah, it's like literally like the thing, but like he's like his foot's in a building. It's like,
Well, like,
he's
but
so-
you'd need him to fight a giant monster. Like,
of course, it'd be a giant.
King Ghidorah with 3 cowboy hats on.
Yes. Oh man.
I want to see this.
Yeah, right.
Anyway,
that sounds amazing.
Predator Western, then answer my question.
Yeah, like, yeah, because like again, like we're doing, if they're gonna keep doing movies like Prey, where it's like they're set in different time periods and like kind of playing with genre,
Mhm.
you could 100% do a movie that takes place in the Old West, where it's like the Predator is stalking people, and you could do something really really cool with that. I think, like. You could do a reference to Predator 2 with like the train scene, but now it's like on a like locomotive. That could be really cool.
So it's the train scene on a train? Do
Well,
you mean the subway scene?
yeah, the
on
subway
train?
subway scene, but you translate it to a train.
I'm pretty sure a subway is still a train. I've never looked that up. I'm pretty sure that
I think
it would be classified.
by technical definition, I believe it would be considered a train.
Yeah.
And as far as like remaking a western,
Any of them.
any western,
Don't think about budget, don't think about anything. You get to handpick a western to remake.
well, I wouldn't want to remake Tombstone because it's a perfect movie. So I'm trying to think of a western that just didn't like was really cool but didn't quite work. You have to give me a second here.
Well, you want to know my answer?
You go right ahead.
You think you know my answer already?
Magnificent Seven.
No, it's been made, remade. It's good. It's,
Why not do it again?
No, you know exactly which one I would fix.
Oh, the Lone Ranger.
Yes, I would make the Lone Ranger, and I'd make it right because that's the
Ethan,
theme of the day.
Ethan, how could you fix an already perfect movie? Hey, be careful with that.
You've lost your rights, cowboy.
Oh man, my hair is terrible today.
You've managed to get hat hair, actually.
Yeah, oh my god.
You have the waves on the side.
How delightful.
You gotta shave your head down again.
Letterboxd considers The Revenant a
Yes.
western.
Yes.
I guess it kind of. I'd remake.
It's the whole frontier thing.
I'd remake The Revenant, but I'd make it not boring.
So you just re-edit it?
I just re-edited it. I'd remake Tremors 4 and make it better.
No, I'm trying to think.
You know what? All right, I got an easy answer.
What's that?
I'd redo Jonah Hex.
I like we're both going into like comic book kind of.
Oh yeah,
things.
like you 100%. I've seen really cool interpretations of Jonah Hex in like animation as well as.
You got something across your forehead. Sorry.
It's probably.
Oh, here, we'll cover it back
Yes,
up. with
thank
your
you.
hat.
This is my grandfather's hat, and it's apparently coming apart. But yeah, like, let's get a good version of Jonah Hex made. Let's go for the try to
And then eventually we can cross over Lone Ranger and Jonah Hex.
I'd watch that. That sounds great. But to me, it's like I've seen such cool interpretations of Jonah Hex in animation and in television, like with Legends of Tomorrow and all that. You could do such a cool kind of harder comic book vibe version of that movie, and it's again, like you've mentioned with the Lone Ranger, it seems like a no-brainer.
Absolutely.
It's got that the scarred, gritty cowboy comes to town, and he's got to solve a problem. And because it's a comic book universe, you could kind of go a bit weird with it. And I do want to see a new interpretation of Ghost Rider at some point, but that's not exactly. I guess it's kind of westerny, depending on which one you're talking about. Because I legitimately can't think of a straight up western that I would actually like to see remade, as far as accent's concerned.
Five goes west.
Five-o!
Papa.
Five-o!
Papa.
Five-o!
So this is gonna seem like a cop out because I'm looking right at it, but honestly, the Invisible Man interpreted into a western.
Yeah, that'd be kind of cool.
You can call it the Ghost Rider.
Oh, that'd be actually a really cool opening scene.
Right.
Just a horse drives into town, but no one's on it, and it hitches up and everything. Oh, that could actually be really cool.
Right? No, I thought about it because I was originally looking at Reanimator, and I'm like, Reanimator in the old West would be kind of cool. And then I looked above it, and I saw the Invisible Man, and I'm like, oh no.
Yeah,
I would tackle that. I'd love to see.
That'd be really cool. Yeah, no, that's a great answer, actually.
I have those sometimes.
Every now and again, you get a good one.
It'd be fun. It'd be loads of fun. Family fun for everyone.
Indeed. Fun for the whole family, and that's...
Well, think about trying to kill an invisible gunslinger.
Yeah. I mean, you can see his gun.
Yeah, but which hand is he holding the gun in?
Well, I mean, he'd have to, wait, well, his gun's not invisible,
Yeah, but which hand is he holding the gun in?
I guess that's a good question.
Because you gotta shoot one way or the other.
I guess he'd have to wear a belt.
No, he doesn't.
It's just on his thigh.
It's just in his hand.
Oh, it's just in his hand? Well, that's not how a duel works. It's got to be in the holster.
I'm not thinking about a duel.
He's just wearing a holster on his thigh.
No, I'm not thinking about a duel. I'm not thinking about from specifically a perspective of
there is no.
Not think of a showdown, but thinking of a shootout. A showdown is different than a shootout.
A shootout.
Because a shootout is when it's the town street and you're all on cover and you're
I just thought about this literally a floating gun, robbing a bank.
Yeah, and then you also have the technique of seeing him too because you have the bandana, right? So and also just that imagery of just a bandana, empty space, and a hat.
That'd be fun too.
Or he's covered in dirt from riding on the road. And then he wipes it off, and there's no man under. It's there's a really cool idea there.
Yeah.
And I may or may not try to write that.
Oh yeah.
Because actually, that's a good idea.
That is cool.
That's actually a good idea. I regret saying this online.
You get a dust devil comes up and
you see the silhouette of the.
Yeah, and then he's
Yeah, there's so.
Oh man, yeah, I. Forget my shitty answer.
It's
you had the right answer.
Blowing down and then suddenly gets stepped on. Mm-hmm. There's a lot. There's a lot to play with.
I would have said John Carpenter's The Thing, but The Hateful Eight is basically a remake of The Thing.
I really expected The Hateful Eight to be The Thing. I really expected it to suddenly be
That's just because Kurt Russell's there.
No, but even the tone, if you were suddenly and one of you's an alien, I'd be Okay, yeah, I could see that.
Bold move, Tarantino.
Oh, excellent.
Avant-garde.
All right, so where can the good people find you, Mr. Prosser?
You can find me at thatjprosser on Instagram. You can find me on YouTube under Jesse Prosser. You can watch short films there. You can find Ethan and I's feature film Damned Rights on
Projector.com.
Thank you, projector.com. I keep because we done it so many times, I keep wanting to say Real House, but projector.com with a K. Give it a rent, give it a buy, show us some support, see what you think. Where can the good people find you, Mr. Hill?
You can find me on Instagram at Ethan R. Hill. You can find me on YouTube as Ethan R. Hill. And you can also find me on Letterboxd as Ethan R. Hill.
Yes.
Judge my movie choices.
You could, yeah, mine I believe is under Jesse Pro. You can find me under Letterboxd and see some recommendations. I just did a top 10 Western list in preparation for this episode.
I have not.
But it'll be up eventually, I assume.
Probably. If I'm bored.
Maybe by the time this episode's up.
Yeah, we'll see.
For sure. Alrighty. Well, thank you for joining us once again for a fun episode, an educational episode.
Tootin
A
episode.
Tootinest episode of A Feast of Films. We hope you have a good time, and we'll see you next time.
Have a good week, everybody. Or month. Or however long it is until we see you again.
Absolutely. We'll see you at some point this year, we guarantee.
Happy trails to you until we meet again. Although we might have to cut that because of copyright.
I'll just add a warble to it.
Goodbye.
Bye, everybody.